Okay, since I talk a lot of my experience in Lineage, I decided to do something like looking into what people on YouTube are thinking about this game, and I found this. This is old video, but still, I think it's to me, at least, it's relevant. From the point of the game, not from the point of server that I'm playing and used to play. So the death of the game, Lineage 2. Enjoy of my reaction. Nerd Slayer.
Before World of Warcraft dominated from its launch in 2004 and on, there was the original blockbuster MMO to hail from the East. More specifically from the mecca of MMOs coming from the biggest MMO-only publisher ever, NCSoft. The original MMORPG to define the word grind and change the industry forever. Lineage 1, which launched in
Grind. Grind. You have no idea.
1999 was a mega success that generated billions, was a subscription-based MMO, and still sees greater success today than most MMORPGs not top 5. But Lineage 1 is not the MMORPG we are covering in this Death of a Game episode, as they were and still are quite globally successful, especially with recent ports and new titles launching on mobile devices.
Lineage 3.
Lineage 2, the sequel, or actually the prequel to Lineage 1, launched 5 years after. Lineage 2 had upgraded visuals in the Unreal 2 engine, and with it came a bigger push to impact the Western market. Lineage 2 didn't quite have the same success as its predecessor, especially when compared to Lineage 1. More specifically for this video, Lineage 2 was a pretty big flop in the West when it launched in the US in 2004. Success was great initially.
It was a success in my country. A lot of teenagers from, I think, from 10 to old age were playing, and some of them in their 40s and 30s still playing this game. But of course not. Most of them are playing in private servers because, in my opinion, NCSoft killed the main game.
In South Korea for Lineage 2 and is still maintained to some extent, just a lesser extent than Lineage 1. Lineage 2 in the West had 15 times less population than in Korea, and currently speaking has a very small and fractured player base. Why did Lineage 2 fail to captivate the Western audience? Let's uncover the clues and find the evidence to answer.
Oh, it's captivated Russian audience, Asian audience, because Russians are killing this game. I mean, spending a lot of time and money in this game, especially in private servers, in global too.
Answer the question on this episode of Death of a Game, Lineage 2. Finding the truth for Lineage 2's failures abroad. We will use those clues near the end of the video in the final deduction. If you make it there, you'll also get a clue on the next Death of a Game that we're working on. Time to form those XP grind groups and click until our fingers can't click anymore.
Still the best screen for that ass. Draconic armor still gave some characters the best ass view ever. Well, except maybe Taluma for Dark Elf female.
An entire near hour-long video can be dedicated about talking about the MMORPG impact of Lineage 1 as a title. Launched by NCSoft in 1999 and putting them on the map both in their local South Korean market and globally. Lineage 1's genius was a combination of tried and
Holy shit, this give it speed of Diablo 2 and a little bit reworking, retweaking. I think this game would be awesome. I mean, in Diablo 2 era. Give Diablo 2 Lineage 1 treatment. I mean, make it MMO with this kind of thingy. Wow.
true foundational methods of driving player retention, commercial success, and longevity in the MMORPG genre. Things like long-term progression fueled by a seemingly never-ending grind, consistent updates, and a reliance on content that isn't entirely consumable, such as Siege PvP. Lineage 1 in 2002 had over 4 million subscribers, and 300
Yeah, siege castle sieges are not consumable for every player. Only be at least in private
30
in private servers, just because of fucking lag. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, castle sieges were not for many people because of equipment, maybe in global equipment gap, and I think the most reason is lag, because Lineage, at least in private servers and some ways in global, are very bad, at least in the old version, up until God of Destructions, I think, because I stopped playing. Uh, it was very badly optimized. It's laggy mess when there's a lot of action is going on, and reducing graphics or something, or view distance, didn't help much. Castle Siege and world bosses are where 2, 3, up until I think to 10 FPS, and
concurrent
slideshow, and that's all.
players. Lineage 1 had a global launch as well, but the success abroad wasn't quite felt in the western part of the globe. This game put designer Jake Song on the map, the same legendary Korean designer that would go on to create another well-known but maligned title, ArcAge. The success of Lineage 1 was so much so that NCSoft was interested in a sequel, which in actuality, timeline-wise, was a prequel being based before the events of Lineage 1. According to an interview conducted on IGN with Lineage 2 lead game designer Hyungjin Kim and producer James Bay, who served as a translator of sorts, Lineage 2 was described as a full 3D MMORPG that has focuses on large-scale PvP, centering on castles and on the political and economic systems that they support. Diving further,
Drama game. Because right now, what I'm hearing, because I recently talked a little bit with my ex-clan clan family, let's say, that server is full of drama. Of course, I'm talking about private servers. So the same shit I think, in the different scale, of course, can be said in the global version.
further into details concerning Lineage 2, The Chaotic Chronicle, Lineage 2 consists of 2 continents and 3 countries. Each country has 6 territories with 5 to 10 hunting grounds in each of them. The regions are unique in background, environment, and even the monsters therein. Forming a guild, or a blood pledge as it was described in Korea, is a necessary part of the game to work on capturing territory in the castle siege system. When a guild forms an alliance or a league, they can be declared as a nation. PvP being a primary focus in Lineage 2 certainly wasn't unheard of for previous Lineage fans, as Lineage 2 in many ways was Lineage 1 with a few major changes in the form of its engine, gear, and its power customization system. For example, Lineage 2 system has classes and prestige classes, and less of a focus on gear for power or
In server that I'm playing, it is up until 3rd profession. 3rd class, I mean. Whatever. Not 4th.
progression. The reason PvP being a central point of conflict in Lineage is so important is it's a large part of the game's success. Although the West hasn't had many successful PvP titles, the East surprisingly has been dominated by titles such as Lineage, which are very PvP-centric. PvP has
Or maybe that's why it was so successful in my country. Because a lot of people want PvP. Except to get to PvP in global, you need to grind a lot. I'm not talking yet. I'm not talking now about pay to win aspect.
Content for an MMORPG is far more replayable than PvE content. Once players have exhausted a raid or dungeon, or even a world boss, and gotten the gear or XP necessary, they no longer typically experience that content. It's already been consumed. PvP, on the other hand, allows for near infinite replayability. With the
Oh, fuck you. That idea, in my opinion, Lineage fucked it up a little bit, NCSoft, in this regard, that world bosses or other types. They introduced raid boss jewelry that is OP as fuck. I'm not talking about what's going on now, but at this point, it makes crazy scaling. And the thing that I dislike with PvE, for example, is that raid bosses, many world raid bosses became instant raids, and it scaled. I mean, the more game progressed, the raid bosses scales up. I mean, new patches, new updates to the game, and I really dislike that because that's how, I don't know how to put it. Because one of the things is there's no cool, interesting raid bosses since that point. We have what in since Biome came, Antares, then we get a little bit of Valakas, let's say, and all of these bosses were scaled up to new updates, more levels, and I think, yeah, okay, Freya, we've got Extreme Cold. I'm talking about up until High 5. I'm not talking about after High 5, what's going on, because that was shit show. So we've got Freya Extreme Cold, jump in difficulty, let's say power level, but that didn't even become more difficult. It became Freya just became more powerful. So without certain equipment or anything or certain party, it doesn't really work. It should be, I think, if you want to do something like that, something like instance, you should give people more levels. I think there's some kind of scaling in WoW. Something like, okay, easy, normal, and hard, and something like epic. Give something like that. No, world bosses scaled up and it ruined. Leave world bosses at the same level. And right now, I think one of the reasons they scaled up world bosses and bosses like Frinteza, for example, just because of raid boss jewelry. Because raid boss jewelry was used in any level, for example, and Queen and whatever. It is B grade from level 52, and it is used throughout the game. A little bit OP, in my opinion. So, and some of these things were just that were promised, I think, because we heard in Lithuania, we heard a lot of conflicting news about the future of Lineage. For example, there was ideas to expand the map in place like Forbidden Gateway, to expand beyond the gates in that territory. Whatever. We never got that. At least we got something like Kamel.
The correct tools, of course. With situations always varying, and especially in the context of an MMO, each battle can be very unique in a game with a level of customization, such as Lineage 2's. When questioned about why Lineage 2 The Chaotic Chronicle, as it was fully named, was a prequel and not a sequel, Hyungjin Kim stated that the reason for establishing the historical background of Lineage 2 being earlier than that of Lineage 1 is simple. Since the creation of Lineage, its history has been developed to be its own. Lineage will continue to be updated as a game, therefore we directed our attention to the history, the past, that Lineage has not dealt with greatly at this point. I should add
Bullshit. I don't know what he will say later, but the story, there's no story. You can get bits and pieces from NPCs, little bit, but there's no good cinematic unless you are getting them from the internet or Wikipedia or whatever. But in the game, only a few bits and bits from NPCs, and yet it is not a lot. A lot of the story is just buried and or non-existent. For example, I was very interested in Frinteza story, Biome story, and there's nothing, almost nothing. But fuck, a little bit, I think Freya, a little bit more expanded, but no cinematic, no nothing interesting that you could read, unless you read comics, Wikipedia, or whatever other sources except the game, in-game. Except a little bit of Seven Signs since level 79. Let's say bullshit quest, annoying quest, but you can do that and find out a little bit about Seven Signs and then Catacombs and Necropolis, let's say. But that's not a lot. And yet, most of the players just clicking next, okay, let's do this. So what's the point of that small amount of story that we get? Unless you are interested, unless you idiot like me, then you have this kind of gripe about the game. This kind of rant. I'm interested in story. Biome story is awesome. Give some quests or some kind of achievement or something to do that. Antares, for example, Shilin. There's a lot of raid bosses that have their unique quests or connected to each other. Antares, Valakas, Shilin, other raid bosses that came out after. And there's nothing. Just meh.
that it also gives them a clever out. If the new title isn't a smash success as the previous one, they can say, well, don't worry, Lineage 1 is still our main game. There's an extra interesting
Lineage 1 still exists?
bit sneakily placed at the end of an interview based on a really good question.
And I noticed previously when text came out, he played in Russian servers, in Russian global. Interesting.
Considering that Lineage has not approached the level of popularity in the West that it has achieved in Korea and the Far East, how important are North America and Europe to you? What differences, if any, are you implementing between the versions of the Eastern and Western markets? We consider the US market and European market to be as important as the Korean market. America and Europe are the original places where RPG players are concentrated, and producing a game that will satisfy these hardcore players is a new challenge faced by the Lineage 2 development team. Our goal is to make well-made games, and one that will be the exception of some specific cultural differences will be popular anywhere in the world. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think that quite answered the question. No. Is it really fair to say that in absolute confidence when Korea makes probably 3 to 4 times more money than the European and US market combined?
I think one of the reasons that Westerners are not inclined to spend a lot of money on bullshit microtransactions in the game. Up until, I think, to 2023, 2022, because there's each day, I think, especially younger generations, spend more and more money on games. I don't think they will play Lineage 2, but for example, gacha games, mobile games, they spend a lot of money in West.
Development for Lineage 2 started at the turn of the century, in
Oh.
October 2000.
Enchanted Valley.
Lineage 2 would hit closed beta testing in
Yeah,
Korea in
shittiest
November of
city in the
2002.
game.
Out of the 140,000 people that applied, for the first phase, only 400 made it through. The testing would get progressively larger and larger over the course of the years. IGN had a hands-on with Lineage 2 in May of 2003. Details released were rather scarce, but IGN made it a point to call the graphics very impressive in Lineage 2, also highlighting the cool use of dragon pets and mounts. As
The pets and mounts. Yeah, pets and mounts came out later. That's some bullshit. We got what? Wolves that were useless and pet dragons that you could only use fly only when you are clan leader and have castle. That's it. So for casual players, no mounts, no nothing unless game pets, game mounts. Shop. From shop, okay.
As expected and intended, IGN highlighted the hallmark of the game will be its intense PvP combat. A month later in Korea would have their open beta for Lineage 2. Lineage 2 was positively trending in Korea population-wise. This was surely suggesting a successful launch was to come. Quietly in North America, Lineage 2's closed beta was undergoing with its limited entrance. Lineage 2 had its Eastern launch in Korea on April 27, 2004. As expected in the region, the game was immediately successful. This wasn't a surprise for many who had the chance to test the game at some point during its monstrous 2 to 3 years of testing, a rare sight in a MMORPG. NCSoft themselves released public information stating that population data was over 1 million active subscribers for Lineage 2, while Lineage 1 was in the 3 million range. Lineage 2 Chaotic Chronicle would launch its open beta across the seas, finally making its way to most of the Western market in March of 2004. The big day for the long-anticipated Western release of Lineage 2 came April 28, 2004. Scoring a 62 out of 100 according to the 37 critics on Metacritic, middling reviews mostly, and not quite matching the response in Korea. GameSpot was quick to highlight the grind in the game. Quests would be just killing 30 to 50 of a monster for little reward in return. This was
I like that. I really like that. It was hard for me to get used to games that when I stopped playing, I was on break from Lineage to get used to questing mechanics because it was my first MMO. Questing mechanics because I needed to do quests to level up. Grinding mobs doesn't work in other games at this scale. So the problem with some of that was, for example, I now seeing that problem with Lost Ark, that I'm doing quests and I'm not using my abilities, I'm not getting used to my character. And I'm not enjoying that. At least give me a little bit more to fight with something. Because I enjoyed combat system, I don't enjoy questing in that game. Questing in some other games is good, fun. At the same point, I mean, in Lineage, you have to do profession quests. First and second profession quests I enjoyed to the even right now. Sometimes I do them because there right now are easier ways to get for second profession. I hate third profession, especially the point where I need to grind 700 quest items. Yeah, in global that was hard because uh, quest item dropped from every second, every third mob. That was a pain in the butt. Since I'm asocial a little bit, that was hard for me to do because I was soloing that. Later, that was easier because there was a lot of mechanics introduced into the game that made solo gameplay much easier and much more bullshit.
Described as being most of the experience on the way from leveling to level 20, where you get most of the access to the
try to get out of Talking Island.
More advanced professions. Solo battles were described by GameSpot as not being particularly exciting, boiling down to sitting back and just watching your character auto-attack while periodically activating.
You are encouraged to play with others, especially since you are encouraged to play with classes like Prophet and Warcrier. But that sucked because Prophet's case, in Prophet's case, he's useless. There's no way to level up him unless you have strong party, because that class cannot solo anything. Warcrier maybe little bit, but still, it sucked.
Spells. Lineage 2 was a point in.
Don't make it so useless. But even in PvP, buff. And that's it. You now can run around and do nothing. Even if you die, you are useless.
Click MMO, though it's.
You can resurrect others with scrolls of resurrection, blessed scrolls of resurrection. That's only job except buffing you will do.
Combat and targeting were very familiar tab target with a hotbar of abilities to choose from. Compared to the more 3D MMORPGs of the time, such as Asheron's Call, Star Wars Galaxies, combat-wise, Lineage 2 certainly was simpler by comparison, being more similar to its predecessor, Lineage 1. IGN, like GameSpot, was also critical of the grindy nature of Lineage 2. While I can understand that old-school MMOers enjoy the game's familiar feel, other recent MMOs have gone beyond the simple kill monsters, get neat weapon, kill tougher monsters mechanic that seems to drive Lineage 2. In the absence of a compelling and original world, this type of gameplay just doesn't hold much interest for us anymore. Most interesting I found in this review by IGN was the.
I think one of the reasons Lineage died for Western market, at least it didn't catch. NCSoft creating that game didn't follow any trends in the Western market that were going on, what Western players wanted from MMO. And that taste and wants, let's say, how it changed in time. They didn't follow that.
The mention of Castle Sieges not being available at launch. I was unable to track down anything concerning this on the web, but Lineage 2 launching without one of its most key features certainly seemed like a questionable thing. I thought writer Steve Butt's point about Lineage 2 suffering from similar Shadowbane problems, where the game is incredibly rewarding at the endgame, but the early game grind is so boring it feels as if you're just going through the motions. GameSpy did an extremely well done review by, well, other review standards especially for the time, concerning Lineage 2. It is longer than the others, but check it out in my sources in the description if you've never played the game and you're trying to have a good idea of how it played or functioned back then. GameSpy in their summary stated that the pros of Lineage 2 were the beautiful graphics, its strong focus on guild and social group play, and that the game was relatively smooth running. For their cons, they mentioned the game's obvious non-focus on smaller scale
Castle Siege were pain in the
or
butt.
casual players, the amount of lag in highly populated areas, a poor chat system, as well as a few guild management tools and minimal customization. Due to NCSoft being a publicly traded company, they release their financials yearly and quarterly. Earlier on in NCSoft's financials, starting from 2003 through 2008, we have population data from each subsequent region. Past that point, we will be primarily using the sales listed in the financials that were released.
I know, some of the people will say, there is a cinematic and everything else. There were no cinematics in the fucking game. These cinematics are pulled only from web, from YouTube, And in the game, there's no such a thing. And these cinematics came out, I think, for every update, for every expansion of the game.
Released later on to diagnose the life of Lineage 2. We can see in June of 2004 that Korea is over 1 million subscribers monthly, with over 300,000 accessing the game daily. The response in the US, however, was, well, to be exact, was 14 times worse population-wise. In June of 2004, the US only had 76,421 monthly users. This isn't entirely surprising as Lineage wasn't as well known as an IP in the West, but it was possible for NCSoft to slowly build up that player base, so it was something to work with. Just a few months after the launch and the population for Lineage 2 in the US was already dropping. Though this was typical for most MMOs, the dreaded first couple of months of an MMO...
I noticed one thing, a few things that I should correct that I was saying. The footage for this, I think, is not from this guy that is doing the video. It is pulled from other servers or the players. I don't think that this guy played, at least it's not his footage. I think so. Russian player.
Launch and all. Lineage 2's updates were being designed in Chronicles. The updates would hit Korea first and then launch later in the West, which kind of goes against their whole original claim of taking the Western audience as serious as the Eastern one, right? Chronicle 2 Age of Splendor would hit in NA December 2004. Coming with Age of Splendor was 3 new zones, and hilariously, especially in hindsight, they added full-on gambling into the game. It should be noted that the other 2 major MMOs to launch rather closely to Lineage 2 was EverQuest 2 and World of Warcraft. WoW was mentioned a few times in this video already, but based on the numbers we have of Lineage 2's population,
what kind of gambling? This looks like Olympia.
It seems like WoW and EverQuest 2 didn't really affect Lineage 2's population very much. I can speculate it's because that they target different audiences pretty fairly, I reckon. Chronicle 3 Rise of Darkness would hit NA May 2005. With the newest update came a slew of much needed changes for Lineage 2. New players got a boost in leveling because, as put in the press release by NCSoft, Lineage 2 has much to offer. It makes sense to get players through the early levels quickly so they fully realize the depth of the game and the amount of fun.
Another fucking game. Bleh. Does the same. Why then give the... one of 2 ways. Fix this shit. Fix early game that it could be fun, or give me a level whatever, or just remove early game and give me that level, stop the grind and whatever. High level servers, for example, private servers.
It provides. New players will get additional items in Edina, Lineage 2's in-game currency for completing lower-level quests. This was a much-needed change in the game because, as many reviewers put already, with a game that focuses so much on the endgame, having a boring and repetitive grind between levels 1 through 20 before you even had enough abilities to make the game exciting seemed like the wrong approach, when you want people to play your game for the endgame PvP. Speaking of Siege PvP, the introduction of Overns made such more exciting with the ability to fly around and drop hot sticky loads on unsuspecting foes below you with fireballs. Chronicle 4, Scions of Destiny
Still, not a lot of players can do that.
Would hit the spring of 2006 and was touted as the largest update thus far for Lineage 2. The Lineage 2 this year, NC will launch the biggest game update ever by introducing Chronicle 4 Scions of Destiny, which can be played over the recently developed and powerful dual-core processor and 64-bit operating systems. Capable of handling more online gamers, this is the most major update for Lineage 2.
Gladiator, and it's using Nightmare armor.
Apart from spectacular picture and sound enhancements, Chronicle 4 Scions of Destiny would feature
Taluma or Majestic, I think, would be better on him.
A new hero system, new character classes, new quests.
PvP maybe, but who goes PvE with Gladiator, for fuck's sakes?
New maps, a new castle, and many new monsters.
Balacas.
This gave Lineage 2 in the West its most successful population thus far, eclipsing even launch numbers at 89,337 players monthly.
And it is fucking scaled up.
April 2006 had Lineage 2 celebrating their 2-year anniversary.
You go max level into Valakas now. That's bullshit.
as a project. In another press release, NCSoft's North America CEO Robert Garriott, yes, brother to that Richard Garriott, stated, "Worldwide, Lineage 2 is one of the most dominant titles in the MMO market, having reached more than 14 million customers in just over 2 years, and continues to grow as NCSoft takes the game."
This view, I was enjoying the mass, the clan, the social, the party system. Everything else, the grind, the economics. He forgot to talk about economics of the game. For example, dwarves were making stuff, spoiling stuff, SS, blessed soul shots, spirits shots, whatever. I'm forgetting acronyms already.
Game into additional territories. This has been a terrific 2-year run for Lineage 2, as we have seen the game find a strong audience in North America and Europe. What qualifies as a customer exactly? The numbers, the ones that are publicly released, don't seem to match that. Unless there's so much churn and new subscribers, perhaps? Lineage 2's population in the West was still rather humble beginnings, especially when compared to its competition and Lineage 2 in Korea. But the population still was steadily climbing. NCSoft, capitalizing on their new forward momentum, would announce 2 major updates for the year of 2006. First, they would be launching their 5th and final chronicle, Oath of Blood. C5, as it was dubbed, would prove to be the most successful update for Lineage 2 thus far in the West, but would also lead to what come after, which was a seemingly consistent
and yet another instant raid boss that is scaled up.
Downfall in population for the title.
Dropping a necklace of Frenteza that's a little bit useless. A grade, but still is used up until max level in private servers.
2 years passed between 2006 and 2008, and population in the West for Lineage 2 drops back down closer to its original numbers. It is noticeable at this point that even in Korea, Lineage 2 and Lineage 1 in 2006 to 2008 were having a bit of a slow period. This could be attributed to the launch of Ion, another flash-in-the-pan Western adaptation from the East, developed by NCSoft that I have covered on the series already, which managed to spike as high as 4 million players in population itself. In both markets, Lineage 2 was still a subscription-based MMO that provided free content updates to those subscribed. But compared to other subscription-based MMORPGs in the West, Lineage 2 by 2008 was already looking and feeling dated. No WASD movement for starters. But the competition was...
It's different system. A lot of games, even right now, is using the same system. I mean, point, click, whatever that is called. Same skill-based system, still same move system. It's bullshit argument.
Heating up in the West by 2008, where WoW was enjoying its great success, not unlike Lineage 1.
WoW use different moves, move system, skill system.
Previous successes. Possibly in an attempt to continue to erect a foothold in the Western audience, NCSoft announced the formation of NC West, a wholly owned subsidiary of NCSoft operating responsibility for Western regions including the US and Europe. In 2008, the Western market for NCSoft was a paltry 15% of their sales overall. Lineage 2 specifically had a very strong performance in 2008, and right prior capitalizing off not just its success with the subscription model in Korea and the other markets across the globe, but also a cash shop that allowed for purchasable microtransactions ranging from costumes to consumables and the lot. But how much of that was from the NA region? It didn't seem like the West was taking to Lineage 2 in the same way that the East was, with both Japan and Korea combining for more than 80%
They are not paying money
of NCSoft's sales. Lineage 2 would have a number of content updates, going from Chaotic Thrones arc, through Goddess of Destruction, and even the epic tale of Arden. We won't dive terribly deep into those anymore as we have the financials and a number of other clues to pivot to at this point in our work as to not get tied up in the details and stuck in the weeds. Here on this NCSoft financial sheet, we see that Ion dominated sales in 2010, while Lineage 2 shrinks to 21% sales overall, with North America and Europe combining for even less at 9% of overall sales. Change was going to need to happen, and
Awesome
happen
raid
quite
boss.
soon. With population data no longer being publicly released at this point, we can only speculate that based on the drop in revenue for Lineage 2, it was also experiencing a
story.
drop in players globally, but especially in the West.
If you are interested, because no story you will get from the game. Unless something changed from Goddess of Destruction or other expansions.
Lineage 2's major update at the end of 2011 would signify not only a slew of gameplay changes, such as adding the Path to Awakening, new zones, classes, more raid bosses, a new level cap, and more ways to help leveling players progress. The biggest part of the update was certainly the transition to free-to-play, or as NCSoft dubbed it, truly free, with no zone, level, or player interaction restrictions. Judging from NCSoft's financials for the performance of 2011, from 2011 to 2012, Lineage 2 without its subscription model was performing below standards, making less sales than the previous 2 years before 2009 through 2010. The free-to-play change for Lineage 2 in the Western audience, it didn't really seem
because it ruined what players that left were interested. They ruined the same mechanics. They almost destroyed some of the classes. For example, dwarfs. So some even races. I mean, dwarfs were ruined because there was no materials to craft something.
seem to accomplish their goals or intended focus of helping
And of course, pay to win.
the ever-shrinking Western audience and shrinking profits. Meanwhile, Lineage 1 was having a very strong performance, tripling Lineage 2's sales. Lineage 2, on the other hand,
Wait, there was strong growth was achieved in US and EU, fueled by successful launch of Guild Wars 2. Firmly positioned themselves as the main revenue drivers for the company. Blade and Soul and Guild Wars 2. Fuck yeah! At least Guild Wars 2 is fun game, and there's a lot of things to do in that game. Even in the core version.
very strong performance, tripling Lineage 2's sales. Lineage 2, on the other hand, would have its moments in the sun, but oftentimes as new players arrived, such as Ion, Guild Wars 2, and Blade and Soul in the space, they took much of that spotlight, both market and monetarily speaking. All three of these being MMORPG stablemates for Lineage 2 under NCSoft. Lineage 2 making its transition to free-to-play would set the course for what Lineage 2 would become going forward into the future, and it wasn't looking good. North America and Europe made up 26% of global sales coming off the launch of their subsidiary ArenaNet's Guild Wars 2, and with the help of another Eastern adaptation coming to the West in Blade and Soul. Lineage 2 was a smaller piece of an already small pie. And to complete the analogy, if NA was a part of this pie, it's the even smaller piece of the small pie from the smaller pie. That's a lot of pie, and now I'm hungry. After Lineage 2, the Chaotic Throne and Goddess of Destruction story arcs, content certainly does seem to slow down for Lineage 2 in regards to updates. The updates that were coming weren't nearly as big as massive updates like Scions of Destiny or Goddess of Destruction, and they weren't coming as frequently. This coincides usually with
This is the point where I didn't play the game. From Goddess of Destruction, waste of time, because they ruined what they made. They could expand on the base of the game. That was not bad, but still you can do it better.
the drop in financials, which we can confirm on screen. As an MMORPG starts to lose money, especially one with more originally defined by a subscription business model, this just guarantees updates will start to come fewer and far in between. To 2016 and onward, Lineage 2 would have some updates in Helios and the Grand Crusade. Numbers were still respectable for Lineage 2, but considering more than 80% of sales for Lineage 2 came not from the West, Lineage 2 went from being the next Eastern success to come to the West and make its mark, from having a paltry existence, not really impacting the Western market much directly. North America and Europe were a bit more resistant to the grind present in Lineage 2, seeing such as more of a symptom of a larger problem. Lineage 2 going free-to-play in NA in Europe is also particularly interesting, Putting on my skeptical hat for a second,
Wait, in Korea it's not free to play?
considering despite what you might think, NCSoft primarily handles in subscription-based titles. Nexon, the other mega Korean publisher, specializes more in the free-to-play titles. This is important because
Still,
the main
Nexon.
reasons an MMORPG goes free-to-play is because they need a business model change to spark the interest and increase population, which in turn means more money. When you're going free-to-play in the Western market, it sort of shows your hand to some extent. You need more players, and a change of business model, which is totally reasonable, can do that. But still, it can be a worrying sign to say the least. I might be wrong in saying
Okay, change, but don't do fucking pay to win. Don't introduce items that will ruin the scaling of the game, and yeah, pay to win, motherfucker. Don't do that. Give cosmetics. There are a lot of games that are not pay to win and still having a blast with money because they introduced very fun cosmetic system.
this, but I wonder if Lineage
For example, Transmog, Guild Wars. Fucking Guild Wars. Learn from that. You could do the same fucking thing without losing the core game. I'm angry because I enjoyed the game. Maybe because I played it with my friends. I enjoyed the system. I enjoyed the I enjoyed the market of the game.
Lineage 2 going free-to-play was a
I mean,
test
in-game
for
market.
NCSoft. Considering Lineage 1 would
What I am not finding in any other game. Well, I didn't play EVE Online. I mean, traditional MMORPGs, fantasy MMORPGs. Even like maybe.
remained a subscription MMO until just recently. In fact, NCSoft at large didn't start doing free-to-play games until more recently as well. Mid-2017 would be the announcement of a title which was following the trend and success of mobile gaming. Lineage 2 Revolution would be published and developed by Netmarble, leading Korean mobile game publisher. Look for a video on this topic very soon. Voiceover and script are already written. Lineage 2 Revolution is Lineage 2 100 years before the start of Goddess of Destruction and that storyline. It is something that we will not cover much in this video.
Creating a lot of game versions on different platforms. Since when this is a good fucking idea? Unless there's a lot of idiots who want to pay the money for bullshit transactions.
But it should be pointed out that since launching Lineage 2 Revolution has not only dwarfed its PC counterpart in Lineage 2, even in Korea, it has eclipsed all of NCSoft's other projects as well. NCSoft was still using the strength of Lineage 2's brand to profit at great length. Some would argue possibly tainting...
What strengths? That they started in 2003 and 4? The game was dying. They were trying to find ways to get more money and made the same thing that every other company is doing. Making mobile or multi-platform game. Let's remember Diablo Immortal that still made a lot of money, but people hate it. But still got a lot of money, Blizzard, for that piece of shit. Because there are fucking whales. People who are spending a lot, ungodly amounts of money just to ruin experience for others and not achieving anything else, just waving their fucking fat wallet. Maybe that's just envy talking, because I don't have money to spend, but I don't think if I had the possibility to spend money on these types of games, I would do that. Maybe just to prove a point. I think Asmongold did that in Diablo Immortal. Trolled like hell, but of course, he still spent money for bullshit.
their reputation in places not named Korea, where such was more acceptable in regards to their blatant microtransactions featured in Lineage 2 Revolution. But was Lineage 2 itself now left in the past? Speaking of the past, September 2018 would be the announcement of Lineage 2 Classic. That's right, following the talks and hype of Classic WoW and the success of private servers in both WoW and Lineage, NCSoft would be announcing the launch of a Classic Lineage 2 server in October of 2018. The odd thing was, well, the game was free to play now, which means that it has a cash shop with items for conveniences, power, and advantages, and wait a minute, how are you supposed to have a classic Lineage 2 experience without having the same business model as the previous game? The game was previously subscription-based, so now you've got the newer modern business model, and you're calling the game Classic Lineage 2.
Wait. That's bullshit. You don't have to use the same fucking business model. You can make it free. Okay. That's not the problem. The problem is that's what they did was not classic. Was bullshit grown on microtransactions and not only convenient stuff, but also paid to fucking win. And you're gonna tell me if you are creating classic, you have to create, you have to put the same things in the game. For example, subscription. Why? Just make the same fucking game only free. Give some skins. There's no way that the game will be the same as the previous iteration of the game, old iteration of the game. I understand that, and some people don't get that, in my opinion. But saying, if it is classic, it should have the same business model. No, I disagree with that. Wholeheartedly, I disagree with that. It's a bullshit argument.
The timeline has now approached closer to today, modern time. 15 years later, and Lineage 2 is still not only...
This is new to me, so I don't know what the fuck is going on right now in Lineage, so this is educational for me.
Only in existence, it is producing content in Korea as well as making respectable amounts in sales when compared to more modern projects and NCSoft's stable. In fact, following the smash success of Lineage 1 on mobile, it was announced in September of 2019 that NCSoft was working on a Lineage 2 mobile port game as well, promising new 4K visuals to go alongside the mobile port. NCSoft was touting the game as being, technologically speaking, an anomaly, stating that other games won't be able to follow it technically. With the amount of money they poured into the cinematic alone, they are obviously pretty serious about making a mark on mobile devices with Lineage 2. My opinion of mobile MMOs aside, and their rampant microtransactions, Lineage 2, like old school RuneScape, features an older style of combat and movement that is more akin to a point-and-click style of gameplay. I believe that that style of gameplay really leads itself to excelling on the mobile devices. Which could mean we could see and hear about Lineage 2 for many years to come, especially with the smash successes of Lineage 1 mobile in Korea. But would the West ever quite entertain either mobile game as a serious contender or a serious product when they weren't able to impress enough the first time around with their PC version of the game?
At least in the West, fuck no. I really hope in the West, no. Because I need to focus because I will start not making any sense. I will start rambling and that won't make any sense because I can do that in English. That could happen in English.
Considering Asia is a far bigger market for mobile games, just period, if it does happen...
Bigger market. They are spending ungodly amounts of money. That's what the problem is.
it won't be.
And Westerns are starting to do the same fucking bullshit thing, spending a lot of money. And Koreans and every other market is so fucking happy. And they're creating gacha games, mobile ports to PC. And the market of the games, market of MMOs and all other online type of games is is ruining the market, because every fucking year games come out more unfinished, more buggy, more expensive. We were having games for $50, euros, whatever, 60, 70. Now we're starting to talk about games 80 and 100. I'm not talking about Game of the Year version or pre-order version or whatever other versions when game comes out. We're talking about stock game that is coming out, and every fucking year the games are not working, are buggy mess, and makes a lot of people even angrier. But still, this bullshit keeps happening because there are still people who are supporting companies that do this shit. At least, if you want that people spend money on your fucking game, do the game right. For example, a lot of people won't agree with me. Genshin Impact. Have patience. It has a lot of activities. It has great story. It has a lot of things good about it. Battle system, combat system. It could have better co-op system, but it's a good game. It's a good fucking game. It has microtransactions. One aspect of that microtransaction bullshit, I very make it a little bit better. For example, the way that you get champions, you get characters that you look into the shop and you see what you are buying. No random bullshit. I mean, this is a fucking loot box. Nothing else. You are buying a fucking loot box and you are have a chance to get something. Yeah. Fuck, I'm getting frustrated with this bullshit. Because they ruined good fucking game. And the game is still alive only because of policies of Russian Global. I mean, 4 games or whatever that bullshit is called. And then the private servers. And I mean, how Innova and other companies that have rights to publish Lineage 2 for NC Soft or whatever, I'm lost in that thing. Whatever. The policies that there are contracts, how content creators could create content from Lineage private servers without getting a fucking ban on the head. Ban hammer, ban fucking plane on the head landing. The fucking nuclear fucking warhead destroying their own channel. This is bullshit. The only way that they could make their game relevant to make these kind of policies. No, you could just make a good game. Guild Wars is a fucking good game. Jesus fucking Christ, that is such a hard concept to...
Nearly at the same scale. We should absolutely mention
Lag.
that the silent killer in massive multiplayer online games is typically the engine. The Unreal Engine in the MMORPG genre is synonymous with beautiful looking visuals for those who can run the game, and sometimes crude looking textures for most others. There's also the whole idea of Unreal Engine being designed originally
Lag.
for 64 players and requiring heavy modifications to function at a massive scale. Lineage 2 for its time was certainly described as being good looking, but it is inescapable that when being played at a larger scale, Lineage 2 and other Unreal Engine MMORPGs have suffered from problems past a few dozen players. I don't know about the engine enough and its inner workings to know exactly why, but I think it's fair to say and assume at this point that MMORPGs that focus on being graphically appealing nearly always suffer from performance issues when played at a large scale, especially ones that use the Unreal Engine. And the entire point of Lineage 2 was massive siege battles. Remember, Lineage 1 did not use the Unreal Engine, and it did not have the same problem.
I already talked about this. Already said that thing. Lag, massive fights where several thousand people are in the same territory. Game is dying. My PC is dying.
Alright, well, it's every detective's favorite part of the video or the story, the final.
Or game doesn't work properly in these massive fights. Even if I had a better rig, better computer. I've seen that in with other players. I don't know. Some of the Russians, I don't know, magically found the way how to make the game work. At least up until 20-25 FPS. I don't know, fucking magic. Slavic magic or curse, whatever.
No deduction. If you were paying attention, you've already solved the mystery, I'm assuming. If not, well, let's solve it together. Lineage 2 was a prequel to Lineage 1, not a true sequel. This always
Who gives a flying fuck? There's no story, so There's no fucking story in the game.
made Lineage 1 feel more like a focus overall, and NCSoft themselves said that Lineage 2 was a prequel as to not interfere with Lineage 1, which kind of confirms that. Lineage 2 was an Asian port to a Western market without enough sensitivity to the market that they were trying to appeal to, which is very important. In fact, there's an entire degree called International Business.
And yet, I don't know how. I'm speaking too early, but I say things when they come up into my head, but I already said that.
For a reason. NCSoft is notorious for focusing first and foremost on their Korean audience. It makes them the most money after all. The Western side of things is an afterthought, and that affects many things like monetization, business models, and even game design. Lineage 2's over-focus on grind was both off-putting to non-Eastern audiences, but also probably a product of lack of innovation in quest design and also other forms of content.
Yes.
Unreal 2
yes.
performed well in pockets and was certainly beautiful for the time.
I agree with that. Questing. Give the possibility for grind and questing. Why not both? Jesus fucking Christ. Why not both? Unreal Engine. Oh, that's a fucking different thing.
But suffered from performance issues at larger scales, in a game based on large-scale battles. There is a recurring theme when covering MMORPGs that NCSoft has brought from South Korea and launched globally that is a little lost in the translation, so to speak. MMORPGs are an interesting puzzle. They are both possible of reaching a global audience and yet alienating parts of the globe at the same time. This is because across the globe there are different cultures, different interests, and these cultural differences in regards to specific things such as game design even, can be a big reason that a game doesn't do well when it launches in another market. If you design Lineage 2 in this case for your own audience, unless you are willing to redevelop the game to launch in other markets for things such as willingness to grind and microtransactions, which were both problems in Lineage 2, South Korea as an MMO fanbase is far more willing to do long-form grinding vertical progression style games. I've had it explained to me by Koreans that it mimics their hierarchy in their culture to some extent, which is very competitive. Add into the whole fact that most people playing Lineage 2 were playing in a PC bang or a PC cafe that has a number of gaming PCs, internet, and food, and all other kinds of nerd goodies. South Korea households don't typically have PCs due to space and cultural reasons. PC bangs, as they're pronounced, buildings or businesses that rent out hourly their PCs, are extremely popular in South Korea.
They have money for that, I think.
They do a very
Not sure,
effective
but-
job at making money for.
I wouldn't do that because I don't have money to spend. And at least my home walls. I don't know, different culture, different culture. I'm not arguing about that. That's I would be stupid if I do that.
Companies like NCSoft. Cash shops in Korea are seen as culturally acceptable.
The thing that must die.
Having money as an advantage is understood in the culture and accepted even in video games. It's also illegal to buy virtual goods in Korea from the black market. I wonder why. Oh yeah, and also it's tied to your social security number, so if you do it, well, that's quite the fine to pay, don't you think? Why not just buy it from the shop instead? In order to climb the social ladder, you have to grind.
So CS:GO no go?
So very grindy games that focus on PvP warfare are quite successful there, and culturally they are more willing to engage in such. That clearly hasn't really been the case at large with Lineage 2 in the West. RuneScape, I think I should mention also at the end here, is a big part of that. It is, in my opinion, arguably, a much better game in terms of the tools that it gives players, player economy, as well as its questing experience. It doesn't necessarily have the same exact siege combat, but it has a lot of other great things as well. It is not to say a simpler model of gameplay with a longer form of progression can't work, because it has worked already. It just means, as I have previously mentioned, you have to do such with sensitivity to your market. It's not incredibly viable to shoot for appealing to all audiences across the globe. It means you compromise far too much on design and artistic choices. Sometimes an MMORPG is just not made for a certain kind of audience. And oh yeah, for those who thought PvP MMOs never work, try and remember again what the largest and most successful MMOs in the East focus on. Thanks for watching, guys.
Wow. Okay. So I was angry in in this video, so that should be fun for everybody to watch me angry. Or maybe somebody is more interested in watching me suffer. Most of the time I'm suffer bad games or a game that doesn't work properly on my PC. I'm still... whatever. So, thank you for watching. Yeah, don't forget to subscribe.